Okay, so the question is about what is known as crepe murder, which is the term used for when people love to take their crepe myrtles and the trees and then just hack them off at the top. And it's not great horticultural practice. So the question is, what is the proper time and way to prune?
I love this. I love this question. You don't have to prune your crepe myrtles. You don't have to prune them to keep them in size. The most important thing is right plant, right place. If you do have big ones, why are you pruning them? What's the reason behind that? It doesn't really increase the flowering, which was the first reason that was done. I think at this point, it's just everybody sees it done, and it also is for landscape maintenance companies. It's something for them to do, but it doesn't help the crepe myrtles at all. It stresses them out. The ones that are done that way every year or every couple of years are covered with crepe myrtle bark scale. That stress really makes the insects go crazy. They're attracted to that. So, unless they're interfering with other plants, then you call somebody like Leaf and Limb to come and do some liberation pruning, separation pruning from other things. That's the only reason. Deadwood, that kind of stuff. Other than that, you really don't need to do anything to them. If you're interested in planting them, remember that you're going to have to deal with crepe myrtle bark scale. If you still want to try them, there's different sizes, different colors. There's every kind of flavor that you could think of. Right plant, right place is going to be a better thing to plant, but you don't have to prune them. I worked at the Biltmore estate, and they made us deadhead them every year, that's part of the reason I think I have neck problems is from looking up with a pole saw. You don't have to do that either. They're pretty maintenance free other than the bark scale.
And you'll get fines. You'll get fines if you live in Cary. It's a city ordinance that you cannot top your crepe myrtle, so just know that.
City ordinance in Cary that you cannot top, which is just that whacking off the tops of the crepe myrtles in there, which I didn't know. The reason it's done so much on crepe myrtles is because people started doing it. And to go back to our first question about moving them, they're hard plants to kill. So, people would do that and they would still live. And so people kept doing it. Whereas a lot of other trees, when you do that, they'll die. So,
the landscape industry needed revenue in January. That's why this happened. That's it. You're never going to not have pine needles. Okay, so the question is about leaving pine needles. There's no point in removing them because they're going to constantly fall. Now, there is a lot of misconceptions about pine needles. Like they don't influence pH. They don't break down. We have a naturally acidic pH in this region, but adding pine needles isn't going to immediately drop the pH lower. That's not how chemistry works. But there's no point in getting rid of them unless you like doing unnecessary work, which if you like unnecessary work, come volunteer at my house. I'll take you, So I think use what is there and take advantage of that. And, pine needles are easy enough to rake off or blow off of plants. And the advantage is they do allow for water to penetrate pretty easily. But I live in the only part of Wake County where there are no pine trees. So I wouldn't recommend getting pine needles if you don't have pine trees. It's not the best mulch. It doesn't really retain moisture or add organic matter, which is really the role that mulch plays. But if you have pine trees, you might as well not fight nature.
Yeah, the number of people who rake away their pine needles and then buy bales of pine straw and put it out is larger than you would think.
Edgeworthia.
Favorite shade-loving shrubs for a woodland garden. So we get everybody.
Camellias and Edgeworthias, you can't live a happy life without them, period. Edgeworthia, paperbush.
Edgeworthia.
And if you email me, I'll send you my PowerPoint, which has all of this information in it that I didn't get to. Brie at briegrows.com. And I have business cards on the back table.
I'll second Edgeworthia. And great winter interest, too.
And fragrant, and all the honeybees like it.
Yeah.
Edgeworthia.
Yeah.
Did you add another one?
No, I just seconded it. Yeah, and Elysiums too are pretty shade color. Yeah.
I was going to say the Elysium, the anise shrub that I mentioned, where I showed the swamp hobbit. There are a lot of different forms of that. They're evergreen shrubs. They tend to be very deer resistant. I won't say deer proof. They tend to be deer resistant. They, depending on the species and the selections, they have either those red star-shaped flowers or white star-shaped flowers. There are variegated ones like Southern Star and Shady Lady that really pop in the shady garden. Super easy to grow. That's a good one.
Witch hazels.
Witch hazels are fantastic, along with their relatives, Fothergilla, which is gets great fall color, has honey scented flowers in the spring. Clethra, our native summer sweet clethra, beautiful shrub with little bottle brush spikes of white or pink flowers.
Oak leaf hydrangea has the prettiest shade of a copper pink. Just love it. I think it's a very unique color, and it's native, which I care about.
Yeah, and the oak leaf hydrangeas are tough as nails. Oak leaf hydrangea, native to the Southeast. It is a beautiful plant, gets great bark as it gets older, orange peeling bark, beautiful big showy foliage, gorgeous flowers, incredible fall color. It's a 4-season plant, and it once it's established is super tough. Is oak leaf hydrangea deer resistant? No.
Yeah, we've been doing grow trials over the last number of years with a really simple deer protection mechanism. If you set up posts, just a standard stake, and you do fishing line, marine grade fishing line at approximately the 3-foot level, when they touch that line, it spooks them, and we found it to be very effective. Kudos to Edible Acres up in New York. We actually learned this trick from him, but we were finding it to be very effective and very easy to do.
Beware that your husbands might not be coordinated and they trip and fall on that is the main thing.
So the fishing line at 3 feet, strung tight between posts. I have, and perhaps this weekend it's going to happen after we had a garden conversation. I went home and I ordered, I can't remember how many thousands feet of this that I'm going to try putting up, and we'll see. And it's perfect. 3 feet is perfect because my dogs are smaller than that and they can get up there.
There's a link to the movie from Edible Acres in the book, chapter 17. So you can actually see it from him, how he does it. Sean Dombrowski, he's sort of leading. Well, anyway, it was his idea.
Yes. Is there any easy way to prevent rabbits?
Coyotes.
Coyotes. No, so it depends. It depends on what you are doing, because if you are putting a vegetable garden in a little plant coffin, like Brie showed, a raised bed or a square plot, rabbits will not go where they can't see. They won't hop over things they can't see or burrow under things they can't see. So if you put up about 18-inch or so board, like something low that you can just step over with no problem around a vegetable garden, you will not get rabbits in there. And that is something that growing up, that was the only gardening that was done at our house really was a vegetable garden. And it worked for years until, it kind of started breaking apart a little bit. And then once rabbits could see in there and see the vegetable garden, they went in there and started, burrowing in there.
So what about the rabbits from Monty Python?
I use cattle fence panels from Tractor Supply that are galvanized steel, so you can use them forever. You can cut them with bolt cutters to whatever size. And on the bottom part, you can add chicken wire, and then the rabbits can't penetrate through. And they're temporary. You can move them. You can make them self-staking by trimming them strategically. And they're really practical.
There are some repellents that you can buy. A lot of them are made from egg putrescence. That sounds exactly like what it is. There's some capucin ones with pepper, but you have to be religious about reapplying those. That's been our worst pest in the garden this year is rabbits, not just with vegetables, with anything new that we've planted, with woody plants. They have gone bonkers here, and we've recently seen sign of coyote, and hopefully that'll help kind of curb the problem a little bit.
I think the Arboretum needs a herd of cats, personally.
Hey, that might work. Let's get some from this side. The question was, are there good resources, cheat sheets for some of these new developments on standards to establish new landscapes? Is that close? All the stuff that we talked about, the extension stuff is super important. Those are some of the best ones. I really think we need to do something like this just for HOAs maybe, to let them learn about plants and the right things to do, because 90% of the time it may not be backed with any sound evidence. Those are the best things. Come to things like this, spread the gospel, visit the garden, get ideas for plants and things like that. But all that extension stuff, NC State is one of the best in the country, and all those resources are right there at your fingertips. Print those up, hand them to the HOAs. That's what I would do. The question was, are there recommendations, resources for people that can help come to your house and consult and do those sorts of things?
Yeah. So on the Chatham Extension website, there is a spreadsheet of businesses in the Triangle region that Master Gardener volunteers have helped curate. So chatham.ces.ncsu.edu. And so Master Gardeners have curated this to some degree. We can't, in extension, recommend specific businesses, but this is a list, and we sent a survey to the folks here to see what if they had any specific interest or specialization, say in natives or something, or bird friendly, whatever. And so it's categorized and in that manner. You can search the spreadsheet for that. Leaf and Lemon's in there, of course, and many others are also in there. You can also, to some degree, maybe sort by if they have, or if they are certified landscape contractors too. That offers a little bit of filtration on skills. So it's the Gardener's Directory, I think, is what we're calling it now. And I can add it to my slide deck or something that's shared out later.
Consulting's a tough business. Yeah. I don't do it.
You get what you pay for too, so keep that in mind. If you want somebody that's really knowledgeable, science-based, good reputations, you're gonna pay for that because it's a hard thing to do. I completely agree with you. People ask us all the time, and my answer is, as soon as we get done here, we'll help you with your gardens.
I would say one thing is separate out somebody's doing the maintenance versus somebody who is giving you recommendations. There's some great landscape architects that do great work. Actually, the artist of our Magnolia shirt right there does great work like that. But he doesn't do homeowners anymore. I don't know if this was, but yeah, I mean, that's the problem is there's so few of those people that they're so busy that they're hard to find. But places like Leaf and Limb, depending on what you're talking about, I don't think y'all do design services, but certainly can come in and tell you how to, or talk to a HOA about what they should be doing to have healthy trees, and they're working with pocket prairies and Piedmont prairies, and things like that, and some of these shared spaces and where HOAs work that could be really useful. Prior to the question was mentioning that on the extension toolbox in there you can filter by sun, shade, size, all these different factors and get lists of plants that way. And then there was a question about what if you ask any of us, because we've done this a bunch, we haven't gotten one of the question yet, but usually one of the first answers is get a soil test. And so the question was from Matt about the soil tests.
So North Carolina has the largest publicly funded soil lab in the country. And they offer free soil testing from April 1st until November 30th each year. Every extension office in the state will have the soil boxes and forms available for you to pick up. And then many of the Master Gardener programs in the Triangle area, at least closest to the lab, will also deliver the completed soil samples to the lab for you. We do that in Chatham. The soil analysis will offer kind of big picture baseline agronomic parameters, so phosphorus, potassium content, some of the micronutrients, and critically soil pH if that needs to be adjusted. So it's good to get a good baseline of what you're working with, and it's free, so you might as well do it. at least every few years. But in my view, data are data, so do it every year for fun, see what changes. And I'll add to real quick on the HOA question. Your agent may be able to meet with your HOA. I've met with some HOAs in Chatham County with a nice little come to Jesus talk, and that's sometimes made a little bit of progress. The biggest challenge is that rarely does it make much of a difference, unfortunately.
I do want to add one thing regarding the soil tests and the recommendations. And Matt said this, but it really has been designed for agronomy. Mm-hmm. And it is important. You do this and you get an understanding of what's going on. But it is still a little bit mired in we put nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium on our soil to increase crops. And we over fertilize home landscapes a lot. So, look at those recommendations and think but you don't necessarily have to go out and dump, 200 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet or half acre or something like that. I've never fertilized my home landscape ever in my life. We've got great, rich red clay soils, and I add organic matter, and that is how I deal with it.
Yeah, Mark's made a really good point. The clay soils here have all the nutrients your plants need. It's just a matter of unlocking them. So the mechanism that's missing is the life. Biology is what unlocks chemistry. So you need to get organic matter back into your soil because that's what feeds life. Life then unlocks nutrients for your plants. Also, photosynthesis builds life in the soil. So not only organic matter, but more plants means you're building soil faster. So essentially, you've got the nutrients you need. You just need to get the life in the soil. That's the number one issue. And
I do want to make one caveat to what I said. I do not grow vegetables. I do not grow annuals, which their needs are different than when we're talking about perennial things that live multi-years that put out big root systems.
Grass.
Well, I don't fertilize grass either because we over-fertilize grass, and I'm okay with other things that don't need all that fertilizer and water growing where my flat green space is. So the comment was sweet gum, which sounds like it's in the perfect spot because it's a big tree and it is shading the house in the afternoon, so it's lowering your energy bills and keeping your house cooler, but it drops loads and loads of gumballs on the ground, and you don't like that. Is there something you can do about that?
This is another one I like. In the realm of tough urban trees, sweet gums are hard to beat. Very few pests, great color through the growing season, great fall color, nice bark. They do produce fruit. They make implements that you can pick those up with that are pretty easy to roll across your yard. You can get growth regulators, but they don't do hardly anything to do that, and it's just an absolute waste of time. It's unfortunately it's part of the tree's life cycle as it produces those fruits. And I always tell people if you've got a big one, the benefits are much more outweigh the having to deal with the seed pods. If it's something that you absolutely can't live with, then you might want to think of replacing it with another tree. There aren't any quick easy fixes other than picking them up. If you look at A.M. Leonard, they sell tools. They have this little thing that it's almost like a basket on the front. You run it across underneath the tree and it picks them up pretty quickly.
And you mentioned that the gumballs are killing the things underneath it. They're not. They're just falling around the things underneath it. A sweet gum can be a tough plant to grow other plants under because it does take up a lot of water. So that's a thing where you want to establish plants small, get them watered in, get them going, and get them healthy, and pick the right plants. There was a question about shade plants, and if you're going under a tree that sucks up a whole lot of water, winter Daphne, evergreen, ultra fragrant plant that small. I plant them right up underneath the trees that suck up the most moisture in my garden, and they grow slowly in a situation like that, but they live for a long time and they're amazing plants. So Nandina? Is there a good replacement for it? Yeah, sure. 1 million of them. All right. I'm gonna stake an aside here. Nandina does not kill birds.
Thank you.
That is a complete fiction.
Yes.
Not a complete fiction. Let me take that back. That has happened once or twice. It is hard to tell from the news reports in Decatur, Georgia, where birds came through the cedar waxwings, which are gorge feeders, and they fed on nandina berries and they died. Several dozen of them. Here's the deal. Go back and look from that time, look at the newspaper articles and read all the way to the very last paragraph where every single article I've read has the city, like Parks and Rec person, horticulturist saying that they estimate that nandina is in just about, I forget the wording they use, just about 70%, I think is what they said, of the gardens around there. The issue is not nandina. Birds hate nandina berries. They don't eat them in the Arboretum here because we have other things that they will eat. They never touch the nandina berries. There are some other issues with nandina. I won't get into that. I'm not saying go out and buy a bunch of nandina and plant them. But the issue was the birds came through, cedar waxwings, gorge feeders. They've got to feed like that. There was nothing else for them to eat. There was no other fruiting plants at the time. If there had been a lot of hollies planted out there, if there had been some beauty berries, there had been other things, they would have eaten other things. That's how I used to sell nandina, was this will have berries like a holly, except for the birds won't touch them because they don't like them. When we reduce diversity and everybody's growing the same thing, we're forcing the birds to eat them. Again, not necessarily saying going out and plant a bunch of nandina. I'm just saying we've gotten confused. We've messed things up and we're blaming the plants for it. But there are a million things you can replace nandina with.
Like yopons?
The dwarf yopon hollies are great plants.
Pretty much anything.
Virginia
any other
sweetspire.
diverse plants will work in those situations.
So
hold on.
Yeah, sorry.
Question was Master Naturalist program, which is like the Master Gardener program, but we're naturalists. The lack of one in Wake County, but I assume the answer will apply more broadly for this.
Yeah, so the problem, with the Master Gardener program, we have specialists on campus that can oversee program development, and the agents themselves have a program area that includes horticulture. We don't have that. We don't have a wildlife specialist per se anymore. So there's no one to oversee a statewide implementation of a program. Where ours originated from was a series done originally in Brunswick County, where there was an agent that had natural resources as part of their program area, so they were able to spend work time working on it. Then during COVID, that evolved into an online webinar series, the Backyard Naturalist series, which I helped Sam Marshall work with. And because of the popularity of that, there was some motion to do some sort of training in that regard. So what we're piloting in Chatham and Durham right now is a localized Master Naturalist program. So they're going through a training, and then they are volunteering with local conservation groups. And as part of the pilot, we had to restrict enrollment because of limited capacity at the Durham County Center. It was only 45 people. So that's why it was really restricted to those residents. Right now, as part of our ongoing project there, we're still collecting data on it. Orange is going to experiment with it next year, and we may in Chatham start doing it independently of Durham in the future. We'll see, and that will have a much broader capacity to accommodate other people. So it really is just up to the inability of the agents to have the resources to implement it. However, let's talk later, and we have a Master Gardener volunteer in Durham that has kind of led the effort. That's been extraordinary, so there may be opportunities there.
So the broad question was how to care for Bermuda grass. Part of the reason that's a popular grass here is it's one of the lower maintenance ones. It's also one that can take a fair amount of drought and traffic and yada, yada, yada. I'm going to go on record to say that I hate turf grass. It's a backdrop for things. It's a necessary evil. We've got grass areas here that are very important to the Arboretum, and we try to grow those grasses that don't require a lot of attention. It goes back to everything that we've been talking about about and something that Basil was talking about. It's about diversity. If you're growing that monoculture, anything that likes grass, if you build it, they will come. So right now, it's armyworms. They're everywhere. They feed on that monoculture. If you're watering it, if you're fertilizing it, if you're grooming it, it's nice and lush. It's like, adding the Burger King special sauce on the grass for those insects and those pests. The diseases, all those things are going to come. The easiest thing to do to keep Bermuda grass healthy, or any grass, is cut it at a higher height. That's going to help keep the weeds at bay. Fire ants are going to be there because you're in the South, and they're going to move around. And they've done a good job about competing other native ants and things like that. That might be something that you have to treat, unfortunately, but that's going to be the only way to get rid of them. And you're not going to get rid of them. They're going to come back on somebody's mower deck. If you've got an HOA cutting grass, they're spreading it around and continuing that kind of drama. So the long rambling answer is there isn't, you've got grass, you're going to have to deal with all those cultural things that are with it. And it gets in beds. If you cut it and you shoot a little piece in, it's going to plop in that nice moist mulch and start to spread a little bit.
I was going to say go to the turf files.
Yeah. So, but for reference, I would say the lawns chapter of the handbook, and then the Bermuda lawn maintenance calendar. If you have to have it, I totally agree. The less, the better. But if what you do have or have to have, those resources would be the best to summarize it. But and we can talk afterwards if you want.
And the company that runs Soil Cube is Supersod, and they have awesome resources that are really. No offense to extension, but a bit easier for normal people to actually apply, because sometimes the extension information is like a little higher than what a normal homeowner needs, or certainly what an HOA would be able to digest. Because let's face it, the HOAs aren't led by people that have any scientific experience at all. And so they're making bad decisions based off of bad practices that were normalized 30 or 50 years ago.
Well said.
I don't like HOAs. Can you tell?
Yeah.
Sod cutter. How do you get rid of turf? The easiest way to get rid of warm season turf is a sod cutter. You're not going to successfully smother it with cardboard like people do in the north, because these grasses run. You're still best to get rid of the turf before you try to implement something new. You're always going to have common Bermuda grass popping up. Period.
Chapter 16 in the book.
There you go. Pretty soon we're going to get to where we can just, point to the webpage, the chapter in the book, whatever. So there's has a small wooded lot, is worrying about the depth of the leaf litter impacting the ephemerals that are the other spring ephemeral plants that are growing there. My feeling is that if those are ephemerals that are naturally there, that they should be able to come to an equilibrium. The volume of leaves kind of stabilizes. There can be some difference in types of trees. Maples are trees that are the leaves will mat and kind of get wet, and they're more likely to smother plants, whereas oaks, while they are thick to start, they're kind of stiff and dry, and they break down a little bit quicker. So by the time spring rolls around, under oaks, it's usually good. But I don't know. Do you have other thoughts?
I mean, when I go hiking and I see ephemerals in bloom and their natural systems, they are in these ecosystems. So I guess it just depends on what kind of ephemerals we're talking about. But if they're the kind that grow in these parts, then they're going to like that setting.
You can always mow. You can always mow those leaves down so they break down faster.
How to care for spirea, what diseases they get, and can they be trimmed back or not? Does anybody else want to answer? I can answer that. So the Asian spireas are great landscape plants because they don't get a lot of diseases. They can occasionally get some leaf spots and things. They don't have to be cut back, but they can kind of get big and kind of wiry and things. So certainly not every year, like I was talking about with mine. You can cut them back on occasion, every few years. You can cut them back if you'd like, or you can just leave them. our native spirea, which looks a little different. It's not kind of a nice little rounded shrub, more upright. Most of our natives, like hardhack, a terrible name.
Tomentosa.
Tomentosa.
And those, same. They're pretty tough plants. Don't need a lot of babying or anything like that.
I would, if you're growing the native spirea, and this is because I'm in the midst of building a natives garden, cut the seed heads off the tomentosa, or you'll have 1 billion of them the following year. They're very capable seeders. You can't call a native invasive. So remember that.
Most of the spirea are pretty tolerant of pruning if you want to keep them in a certain size. But again, right plant, right place. There's small ones, there's tall ones, and there's good native ones too.
The native ones deserve a little more breeding.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
Recommendations for ground covers where pets do their beeswax. We actually did a midweek on this time last year, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh boy. Again, it's one of those things. It's one of the perils of being a pet owner. Get smaller dogs, maybe.
So yeah, I have a couple of dogs. I have a couple things that work pretty well, but if your dog's always going out to the same spot, buyer beware. Also, some dogs, my daughter's dog, I don't know what that goes on with that dog, but where it pees, things die. But there's a Taiwan creeping raspberry. When you walk around after this, which I hope you do, walk around the garden out here in Asian Valley, Rubus Rolfii, often sold as Rubus pentalobus or calicinus, but Rubus Rolfii is a really good plant for that. It's very vigorous and it spreads. If it's a real sunny spot, there's a great native Origeron pulchellus, meadow muffin, or Lynnhaven carpet that has been very resistant even to my daughter's dog's radioactive pee. It's kind of a little silvery aster type plant, low and flowers above that. Yeah, it's right outside here. Another one that has worked well for me in both sun and shade with my dogs is some of the really vigorous bugleweeds, ajuga. There's a new series, relatively new, called the Fancy Feathered Friends, Fancy Feathers. I don't know. They all have birds, feathered friends. They have birds in the name, like Parrot Paradise and Tropical Toucan. Those have been amazing in my garden and have really held up to the dogs pretty well. Carex, yeah, are a lot of these grassy carex type plants that grow sun or mostly shade gardens, but you plant those, especially the ones that are spreading, and that's the key with a lot of these things. If dogs are going to be running on them or peeing on them and on them, is you want things that are not just clumping; they have to be spreading so that they can repair themselves as they go.
Maybe Chrysogonum. Green and gold.
Green and gold, Chrysogonum, yeah. If you want a vigorous, that's another native woodland plant, Chrysogonum virginianum. Get Eco Lacquered Spider. It grows so fast, it's scary.
And training your dogs to kind of go in spots too. We're fond of saying that a lot of the problems that come from dogs are actually, and not in your case, there's start with the owner. There's ways to kind of keep those habits going in a direction. In terms of keeping them out of things, that's easy to fix with. I like to take pieces of bamboo and just kind of fold them over into little hoops. I've got a Scotty, so she's pretty small, and that works really good to kind of steer her in and out of directions that they don't want to, that they shouldn't go into.
Maybe you can train them to go on their lawn.
My dogs, I have pretty well trained my dogs to go to the bathroom, at least to poop, in my woodland garden. And, I wish it would, scare deer away a little bit better, but it doesn't. I just, that's where I always bring them. And so they know where to go. And so now, even off leash, that's where they want to go. Will scale on maples kill them, or should they be removed?
It depends on, again, what scale. Probably the worst scale on maples is gloomy scale. And that's again, something that's attracted to poor cultural practices. It depends on the situation. A lot of scales are controlled by beneficials that are already out in the landscape. If you have to treat, start with the lowest thing first. Soaps and oils work really good, timed correctly. But it depends on what type of scale it is.
I'd also say start with the base, make sure the trunk is not covered with mulch, add some wood chips and leaves around the tree. So now the soil's getting healthy. It allows the tree to defend itself more properly. And then the oils the dormant oil applications we found to be very effective. And then one little pro tip, when you're evaluating your progress on gloomy scale, don't look at the trunk.
Yes.
You need to actually look at the new twigs that grow out. So if you get a new year of twig growth and it's free of scale, then you've solved the problem. But the black on the trunk will be there for a long time.
They're not terrestrial. They don't move around. When they're at the crawler stage, they go onto the new stem. So that's a very, very good point.
Yeah, and the dormant oils suffocate them, and the adults will still look like they're there for a while.
The cultural practices first are always the best place to start. Most pest problems start from not doing the right cultural things, planting too deep, mulching too much, overwatering, pruning incorrectly or pruning too much, all those cultural things.
Two questions. Container gardening, does it have to have a hole in the bottom of the container?
Yes.
Container gardening, does it have to have a hole in the bottom of the container? Yes, unless you are growing water lilies or
Rice.
bog plants.
Or rice.
I'm a beginner. Yeah. And second, what's wrong with privet?
What's wrong with privet?
I don't know.
Okay, privet is there are a couple different types of privet. Well, there are a lot of different types. The little leaf privet is a still unfortunately widely sold landscape plant. It is almost a perfect landscape plant. It is tough as can be. It'll grow in sun or shade. It flowers with flowers that some people like the smell of. And gets black berries. The birds love the berries. It's hard to kill. You can shear it into little shapes. I remember growing up there, somebody had a line of elephants sheared out of privet. It really invades natural areas a lot. The birds move those fruit around. It produces just a phenomenal amount of it. The nursery industry is something that Greg and I have been talking with the North Carolina nursery industry. They need to kind of self-regulate on that and stop growing it completely. There are some fruitless ones that don't flower and fruit, but they generally revert and will start flowering and fruiting. We just need to stop doing them. There's also the glossy leaf or wax leaf privet, which has a larger glossy leaf. It's not quite as bad here in terms of escaping everything. It's just, they're boring plants. Let's grow something more interesting that doesn't have those same problems. There's a lot of other great stuff out there that we can do instead. Don't let them volunteer. Yeah. They're really hard to get out too once you get them in, and just get them out.
I have to get one.
Tips on dealing with voles.
Oh, I get excited about this. Garlic. And we are in getting ready to be garlic planting season right now. So if you ever look on the animal repellent ingredients list, if you buy vole repellent, usually garlic is a component of that. Why would you take the time to be putting repellent out when you can grow something that will repel them that you can then harvest and eat? So it's very practical in that way. You plant the garlic in the fall. Cloves, you can buy it from the grocery store. There's nothing wrong with grocery store garlic. Don't take the paper off. And you thumb them in, the depth of maybe an inch? Put them all along your bed edges. What you want to create is an impenetrable barrier. So when the voles come up to your bed, they make a U-turn and then they go to your neighbor's yards. That's really your only goal with animals. And I deal with a ton of animals because if you haven't been down there lately, it's like Cary 30 years ago. There's, plastic housing development sprouting everywhere that used to be tobacco fields. And we have so much more animal pressure as a result of all that development. And the vole population is totally off the charts. Garlic, onions, leeks, all those onion relative plants, like even, chives work. Nobody wants to have a million chive plants because you're not going to use them. Garlic is the most practical thing that you can put along your edges. Now, it only works for the cool season. So garlic is a cool season crop in North Carolina. We can grow both hardneck and softneck, so you don't have any limitations for what you can plant. Plant the variety that you like the name of. Like last year, I bought Transylvania just because I knew I'd remember the name Transylvania. Music is a really good cultivar, large cloved hardneck. But you want to plant them in October. They'll grow all winter long, and then they senesce. The foliage starts to die back. That's when you know it's time to yank them out. That's typically the first 2 weeks of June. So it gives you vole protection from October to June. And then the rest of the summer, you need to have my cats come and visit your yard.
And actually, where I was going to add was gardening to support wildlife. I'll get voles showing up every now and then, but I have a lot of owls and hawks and snakes around my house. And I love the snakes around there. They don't bother me. They don't bother the dogs. I don't bother them. Occasionally, they'll give me a little jump scare, but that's about it. And they really take care of the problem.
Don't use the baits or the poisons. They're ineffective at best, and a lot of time that ends up into your pets or owls or other types of predators.
So we have a couple more questions, and you can ask us in person, but we're actually out of time now. This is why we do a long hour for the questions and answers. I want to thank again Leaf and Limb for supporting this. They are passionate about trees and tree care and creating healthy ecosystems and habitats, which healthy trees are a part of. Please go over. The book is just a great read. Once you get past that first chapter, that's kind of depressing. It's not all doom and gloom. It's just that first chapter to get you ready for some solutions. But get a hard copy, get a digital copy, tell friends about it, and get them to come. And if you have questions, we'll be around for a little bit longer than we'll answer some questions. And when I say we, I am not volunteering anybody except for Greg and myself to do that, because everybody else probably wants to get home and garden.